This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. Make sure you subscribe to our Substack so you don't miss any episodes. Legacy media has a headline they repeat no matter what's going on. Democrats in disarray. It wouldn't be a surprise even to see them lead with that on the morning after Ron DeSantis' failure to launch his campaign and Donald Trump responding by screaming about his bigger red button. Yes, it's true. All of the worst people you know are fighting. It's Republicans in disarray. On Wednesday night, Governor Ron DeSantis, Florida Republican, attempted to launch his official campaign on the world's second richest man's platform. That's Elon Musk, best known recently for his affinity for replying to amplify Nazis and what he called rapid, unscheduled disassembly of SpaceX as it exploded on the descent. It would be correct then to say that DeSantis's launch experienced rapid, unscheduled disassembly. That's Elon for failure. The chosen venue was audio only, which is an odd choice for a presidential campaign, but not really odd if you've seen Ron DeSantis on video. I stand by my determination that DeSantis wisely calculated that he would be humanized next to Elon Musk in comparison, and that might have worked had the entire Twitter space not turned into the Elon show and complaints about Twitter. It began with 20 minutes of screeching feedback and glitches so bad that the entire Twitter space had to be shut down and a new one opened. This caused a drop from, 600,000 accounts to, at one point, 192,000. The second space never got near the numbers of the first one, but it's also worth noting that a lot of Elon's followers seem to be bots, and he did push his account on Twitter, kind of forcing it on people until he could finally beat Barack Obama, who had more followers than he did. Until after, and that was after Elon bought it, he finally managed to eclipse his, I guess, who he sees as his rival, though I don't think that Barack Obama would agree that they're even on the same level. The tech problems that happened during this launch were at one point blamed on server loads. Elon did get rid of a bunch of servers thinking that he didn't need them. This is part of his, what he seems to think as his really great decisions, cutting costs. And a co-moderator, David Sachs, claimed that this is probably the biggest room that's ever been assembled online. In response to that, a Verge editor, Alex Heath, retorted, "I've been in bigger clubhouse rooms." And the New York Times startup and venture capitalist writer Aaron Griffith added, the 12 million people attended a virtual Travis Scott concert in Fortnite. And more people watched two BuzzFeed employees explode a watermelon on Facebook in 2016. So the fail is kind of just bleeding everywhere. Eventually, though, Ron DeSantis got to make his announcement and his speech, but it quickly devolved into the three white men running the show. The other co-host, that's David Sachs, is a venture capitalist, complaining about, quote, the elites, unquote, and the media, quote, unquote. They did this on a huge social media platform owned by Elon, who is, again, the world's second richest man. I think that qualifies him as probably one of the most elite people. And Governor Ron DeSantis, who has taken it upon himself to make law about what people can say and has allowed the banning of books that offend him. And therefore, I would say, is no powerless punk, even if Donald Duck has bested him recently. DeSantis denied that he banned any books as well, but Penn came back, and many times he's denied this, and Penn has fact-checked this. So the last time they fact-checked this was in March, but I think it's pertinent to get into now anyway. DeSantis claimed books are being removed from Florida classrooms and libraries because they're pornographic, violent, and inappropriate, not because he's banning them. But the facts are the books that have been banned in Florida include biographies of Hank Aaron and Roberto Clemente that Duval County admitted to removing from the shelves for nearly a year, along with 177 other books from a collection of diverse books. Other books banned, and Tango Makes Three, which is a picture book about two male penguins raising a chick. Stella Brings the Family, a picture book about a girl with two dads. When Wilma Rudolph Played Basketball, pulled from the open shelves temporarily after one person complained about it. Forever by Judy Blume. Book prize winner The God of Small Things by Aaron Date Roy. Nobel Prize winner Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. All Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And dozens of other books that include LGBTQ plus themes, protagonists of color, or that touch on race or racism. And ultimately, in the 2021 to 2022 school year, PEN America documented 565 books banned in Florida schools. Some were banned permanently, others temporarily, pending investigations, but the result is the same. They wrote, students can't access books. These are some of the worst people. These are the worst people that we could possibly, that we could know. These are, in modern day, these are the worst people. The biggest problem with Ron DeSantis' Twitter Space campaign launch, however, was, as Jason Easley wrote on our Substack, that it was boring, really, really boring. It was impossible to see how this dull as watching paint dry culture warrior can possibly defeat Donald Trump. Ron DeSantis sounds small time, he looks small time, and he lacks the presence and charisma to effectively engage voters. It was also true. I mean, I checked into this Twitter Space, and the coughing and the glitching was really off-putting. But then these three men, when they were talking, it was a lot of whining and weird, just this very kind of insular bro culture that I personally wouldn't have listened to on purpose if it weren't my job. So DeSantis attacked the NAACP while also claiming that he was great for black people. Then Musk brought up Nazis while the three hosts laughed at media outlets allegedly suggesting that the only people listening would be Nazis, which I can tell you as someone who was listening made me want to leave immediately. I can't imagine that was a good sell to any swing voters, that if you're listening to this DeSantis campaign launch, you're a Nazi. Ha ha, ha ha. The boys found this being called Nazis so funny. I guess you had to be there, but aren't you glad you weren't? But I promised you guys a fight, and a fight you will have. So while Elon and Ron were fiddling around in the dark in this audio-only space, Don, I have to call him Don now because, Elon, Ron, Don. Obviously it's Donald Trump, but let's just call him Don because it works. Was over on his social media company. Can you imagine that any of these men feel sorry for themselves and feel victimized by the media when they literally own these huge social media companies? Don was over on his social media company mocking, quote, Rob, which is, I guess, his new name for DeSantis, unless it was a typo, for having a small, quote, red button, unquote, while making concerning references to Kim Jong-un. soon being his new friend. That doesn't really make anyone who's saying want another Trump presidency. Doesn't that bring back a lot of... That's a little PTSD of his presidency for me, where he elevated dictators and really seemed to bow down to them a lot of times. He was subservient, ingratiating. It was bizarre to watch. Well, anyway, so Don wrote on his social media, Truth Social, "Rob, my red button is bigger, better, stronger, and is working. Truth, yours does not, per my conversation with Kim Jong-un of North Korea, soon to become my friend." That's what Trump wrote. We really kind of need a Trump interpreter for this. Jason and I were debating after that. What does he mean by this? Is he, I wrote, because I finally determined, hopefully he's making this phallic reference and not a nuclear reference. But you can never be sure with Donald Trump. And that's one way that he continues to get away with saying outrageous things that really don't belong in normal political discourse that's done in the public. Yeah, but we spent time debating, is he, red button is a nuclear reference, right? So, but here he is kind of using it in this phallic way, suggesting that his is bigger, better, stronger, and that Kim Jong-un, somehow has information about Ron DeSantis's red button. None of this is appealing. I mean, no matter what this means, first of all, it's kind of scary if it's a nuclear reference. If he's talking about intel somehow that Kim Jong-un has on Ron DeSantis, that's weird and disturbing. What kind of conversations is he having with Kim Jong-un? And if he is making this as a phallic reference, it brings up what Stormy Daniels said about Donald Trump, which, referencing a mushroom. All of this is the kind of discussion we shouldn't be having when we're talking about a presidential candidate, when we're quoting a presidential candidate. So I don't want to be having, I don't even want to, I don't want Donald Trump in sort of any of my world. I would rather he was on the outside and I wasn't even having to quote him. But, I don't get to choose who runs for president. So here we are. We're in Don's world where we are wondering whether his comments are kind of a nuclear threat or he is talking about making phallic references to prove that he is the bigger man. Oh, God. Why are we here? These are the worst people. They really are. Okay, so Don followed that. If I get caught up in how bad these people are, I'm not going to be able to finish this podcast ever. So well, I'll have to keep moving forward. Don followed this with a video of SpaceX exploding as it fell to the ground with Ron 2024 written over it, which was probably the best moment of humor that Donald Trump has ever managed not to spoil with his bitterness and anger. But, that red button does haunt. So I can't say that I managed to laugh at this, SpaceX explosion comparison. It was a good comparison, and it really was probably the funniest, the closest to humor that I think that Donald Trump's ever managed for people who aren't really, really angry and resentful. Most of his humor is aimed at people who are really want someone to get beaten up in front of them. It isn't this kind of light, satirical, fun humor, which would have been nice if he could stay there. But no, we're talking about Donald Trump. So, of course, he had to do something really weird on his Instagram that he also shared on his Truth Social that started off as maybe good satire, but not really. But it quickly devolved due to the natural proclivities of the party involved. It started off as this satire of the Twitter space, but he had replaced the people hosting and speaking with the devil, Hitler, Elon, Ron, George Soros, that was weird, Klaus Schwab, and Dick Cheney, with loud coughing over this empty space, just like the actual announcement. And that was, sort of funny, but just seeing the George Soros, a little, because of the anti-Semitism that's the right keeps lobbing at George Soros. So that was a little, and next to Hitler, that wasn't really, I don't find that funny. I guess, but some people did. So then there's loud coughing. That was just like the actual announcement, the lags and the glitches. And that was all working satire, let's say. But then Don foiled his own humor with, quote, jokes. I'm going to put that in quote because it depends on who your audience is, about everyone on the call being gay. And that was followed by Trump entering the Twitter space to tell everyone off, which really kind of called attention to the anti-Semitism and the general grossness of being around someone like Don Trump. Yeah, these are not people that most of us would invite over for dinner, and this is why, because he thinks that that calling people gay is an insult, and it was kind of the best insult he could come up with. I mean, really, if he had just focused on this, on the Nazis, which Elon and Ron DeSantis were laughing about being called Nazis, if he had focused on that, he would have really made a point. But leave it to Donald Trump, and to know his audience. His audience isn't you or me. His audience is people who enjoy a kind of toxic thuggery and low level humor. But however much Donald Trump isn't my cup of tea, he did, however, wipe the floor with Ron. He, Ron's campaign launch was, I really thought it was going to go badly. Didn't imagine it going this badly. And there's nothing Elon can do about it, which seems like a really big loss for those two horrible people. So we have one left from that group. Don. And who knows? There's a lot of legal fights, but I think he's looming large over our political landscape in a troubling way. In response to this DeSantis launch, Newt Gingrich, himself rather an expert on bringing his entire party crashing down, went on Fox News to explain that DeSantis is really smart, but his problem is that he doesn't communicate like Trump, who uses third, fourth, or fifth grade levels to speak to the base, which is why the Republican Party is now the party of, quote, working Americans. I just pause for a moment here that he said this on TV, on Fox News. I wrote about it because it was so insulting. I couldn't fathom that. I guess if anyone was going to bring more fail to this situation, it would be Newt Gingrich, right? I mean, this is what he does, so why should I be surprised? I shouldn't be surprised. I just didn't think they would say it out loud. This is something that they usually say behind the scenes. Just say it on Fox News when they know everyone's listening. Maybe they're so sure that their base has had the Kool-Aid. They're nothing's getting through the Kool-Aid, and they can say whatever they want now, even insulting the base. But I don't think that talking down to the base on their top network is the best way to move forward for the Republican Party. But it's also a weird way to excuse the sort of the lack of policy meat in Trump's rhetoric, and frankly the dearth of policy that is good for those same working Americans. That is the entire Republican Party platform. So their entire platform caters to the elites, and they use this kind of culture war. These culture war distractions, drag queens reading a library book to somebody, really seems to be enough to distract their base from actual legislation and actual policies that harm the majority of their base. They do cater to the wealthy and to elites, but does not make up the majority of their voters. So they have to make up for it by kind of distracting people with various culture wars. So they used abortion for that for a long time. They did that on purpose. That's how abortion became politicized in the first place, because they needed a get out the vote tool, and their candidate was not resonating with people. So I don't think Donald Trump has that problem. He does resonate with their base, and that's in and of itself a problem, because he really does turn off independent voters and those suburban women that the Republican base needs to keep on their side in order to keep winning elections of any kind, on top of the gerrymandering. Of course, this is a big picture. The way they keep getting away with having such harmful policies for the majority of people is a sort of much bigger picture that is enabled by the corruption of our political processes here. And that's been ongoing probably for decades now. So we don't have time to get into that. But, for people wondering, and I think this always troubles me, people seem to think, well, if we get rid of Donald Trump, it'll be cleaned up. Well, that's just not going to happen. It's not going to get cleaned up until we clean up the political process here in the United States, until we change some laws, clean out the Supreme Court, get rid of corporations or people, clean up Citizens United, and clean up this gerrymandering. I mean, there's a lot to be done to protect the long-term ideals this country was built on. But, so that's a lot to get into that needs to be fixed. But we get into that often. So right now, we're just going to stick with this sort of worst people we know fighting. Elon's failure to launch Twitter into the stratosphere of relevance that he craves after he destroyed its actual relevance as being a good source of information brings up another issue. How is he going to accommodate right-wing white supremacy advocate and January 6th domestic terrorist attack cheerleader Tucker Carlson, who is going to be launching his show on this same platform? If it is successful at any point, it will escalate Elon's Twitter stench of sort of this neo-Nazi adoration combined with the rage of angry incels to quite unbearable levels. That is, if the platform can actually even serve up a show without glitching and echoes and server failures. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe the fail is the attraction for Elon. Maybe too many people are stopping to watch the car crash. And if that's the case, I really hope we've all learned from 2016, because that doesn't end well. Right now, we're watching this car crash of all of these bad people, but that is an important narrative. It's not the same thing as spending all day on Twitter because you want to watch Elon fail, or tuning in to watch Donald Trump's CNN town hall because you want to watch him fail. I think that the attention that these failures have gotten has been translated to dollars by really greedy corporations, and greedy people like Elon, and they are continuing to try to capitalize on that. But we saw that it didn't really work with Trump's town hall for CNN. But this is telling a bigger picture. So all these worst people we know fighting is kind of fun to talk about because they're some really bad people. They've done a lot of harm to, and by bad people, that's what I mean. They've done harm to vulnerable groups of people, and so being a bad person, that's not. I don't say that as an opinion. I'm saying that as based on that they have created harm and done harm to vulnerable people. So it's not just like, oh, we don't like these people because we don't like a policy they have. It's that the policies that they stand behind are mostly these culture war issues that have lent themselves to actual real world harm over and over again against trans people, against black people, against minorities, against women. The list is endless of people that are being harmed. So I think that the bigger story, though, is how these people are fighting among themselves because there is only so much room for toxic billionaires and millionaires to take up all the room. They've got to grift. They've got to grift from a small pool of people compared to how much money these folks need for themselves. And maybe the overarching kind of ultimate goal that some of them have to enable authoritarian takeover of democracy. And maybe it wouldn't be, I'm talking more of a Hungary type, what we're seeing in Hungary right now, not what people, I think people are thinking, oh, the Nazis aren't here, they haven't taken over, they're not in the streets marching. Well, that's not really what it's going to look like. When authoritarianism or fascism start encroaching on democracy, first of all, they start through the media, and we're already seeing that, and that's troubling. They change laws to make their power grabs legal, and we are seeing that. Now, right now, there's a lot of pro-democracy people fighting back, and they've been successful, but this fight is far from over, and that's why seeing a lot of this kind of these people go at each other is slightly comforting. It's just, because there's only room for one, really, and they're all kind of warring with each other who's going to get all the power. But Tucker Carlson is only working with Elon Musk on a social media platform in the first place because he was fired from Fox News. So that gets us to more worst people fighting. Fox News, which has been, and there's an asterisk there after news, has been in the news for the $787.5 million settlement with Dominion Voting Systems, as well as another defamation lawsuit launched against it for its elevation and amplification of known election lies to the detriment of our democracy, and yet another lawsuit by one of Tucker's former producers for discrimination. Fox News came to Tucker's summer home in Maine. I don't know how many of you out there have just returned from your summer homes or are going to your summer home to build a studio for yourself, but Tucker has a studio in his summer home in Maine, and Fox News came to dismantle and remove much of this home-based broadcast studio, including equipment owned by the networks, according to The Wrap. Fox News came in last week and got all their SHIT out of their They took the set and everything, all the equipment, the chairs, the desk, the fake walls, and everything. Oh my God. They took the fake walls, y'all. This is so sad. Yeah. So who knows what really went down between Tucker and Fox News, because I really don't believe, in retrospect, that it had anything to do with a woman having an issue with the way she was treated by Tucker. Given what was already in the media, we already had Tucker on tape saying some awful things about underage girls, so I just don't think that Fox News cares about that. I think it was more to do with an inner power struggle going on, but anyway, the walls are down. The fake walls have been taken from Tucker Carlson's studio. So that is another epic fail by some of the worst people we know. And Tucker is, he'll rebuild his studio. I think he already is. So that isn't a problem, but for him. But it's still delicious that Fox came and took their equipment from him and left him without his studio in his summer home. So that is a bunch of kind of epic fails by some of the worst people you know. And I think it's time to ask, are these the best people the right has to offer its base, from social media to presidential not nominees, but, party nominees, yes. Is this presidential lineup really all they have? And did their person who was supposed to beat Trump, Ron DeSantis, really, the best he could do was this huge fail on Twitter in an audio-only space? My God, the depths to which this party has plunged, pretty incredible. Well, that's it for this episode of The Daily. This is Sarah Jones on the Politicus Pod for Politicus USA's The Daily. If you are tired of billionaires, the above-mentioned billionaires, by the way, controlling the news that you see, and you want to support independent news that puts the people first, please consider subscribing to our Substack. Thank you so much, and I look forward to talking with you soon.